Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day, good night, good everything. So, let me tell you what I want to talk about now, today. I want to talk about patience. I wish I could just do a survey and ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, what level of patience do you believe that you have? And I think honestly, some of us have a lot more patience in one area than we do another area. Like I have a lot of patience with my students. I have a lot of patience with young people. I don't really have that same patience with older people because in my little warped little mind, I just still think that once you get a certain age, you need to grow up. So, and I know this, but I was thinking about, just why God tells us that we need to have patience. We need to have patience because when we don't have patience, we tend to make dumb decisions. We don't make the most smart decisions when we're being impatient. We don't make the most wise decisions when we allow ourselves to become anxious. You've had people, you hear it all the time. You have people who will marry somebody they didn't even want and they knew they weren't supposed to be with because they got tired of being single and they didn't have the patience to wait. You have people who took a job they knew they weren't supposed to have out of desperation because they didn't have patience and they didn't want to wait. You have some people who closed on a house and they closed on that house knowing that they did not even want that house, but they didn't have the patience to wait. We have a lot of bad decisions that occur because we don't want to wait. And some of this has to do with just the world that we live in. Let's think about it. Let's be honest. You go to a drive-through and they say 2 minutes or less or it's free. You log in at the drop of a hat, and then everything is just right at your disposal. And it's so funny because even when I was trying to make this video, everything on my computer started buffering. And it probably only lasted like 10 seconds, you all. But I was thinking, are you serious right now? I'm not about to sit here and wait on you to buffer because we don't like to wait. And it made me think about a story in the Bible of someone else who made a bad decision because he didn't want to wait. And this can be found in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 24. And I absolutely am going to read all of them to you. It says, Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. And that's the story of the prodigal son. But what I found to be interesting, one of the things that the Lord pointed out to me was the fact that the reason why he was dead was because he didn't have the patience to wait. His impatience is what ultimately killed him. The reason that he was lost was because he didn't want to wait. Because his impatience took him out from the covering of his father. So he had everything, you all, he had everything he needed. And he had access to all those gifts. Everything that his father had, he had access to. But that wasn't enough for him. Because he knew that his father had an inheritance for him. And he said, I don't want to wait until my father dies. I don't want to wait until he's no longer. I want my stuff now. The problem is he did not have the character to hold on to his things. He did not have the integrity to hold on to what his father gave him. He did not have the discipline. It told us that he squandered everything to the point that in I don't know how long he was out there, but in a short window of time, in the same book, in a short window of time, he lost everything. It says he squandered everything because he had no discipline. He had no self-control. He didn't have the wisdom to hold on to those things that he wanted. So sometimes we have to just look at ourselves. Like during that season where you know that God has made you a promise, whether or not it's for a relationship. You know, some of you are believing God for a child. Some of you are believing God for a husband or a wife. Some of you are believing God for a job or a career change. Maybe he put a business in your spirit and you're just thinking, I know what you showed me. And yes, we're supposed to hold on to trust. And yes, we're supposed to hold on to faith. But we also have to be patient. Because if you get that thing out of season, you cannot hold it. You won't hold it. Because you don't have the makeup. You don't have the buildup. You don't have what it takes to hold it. So that's why when the Bible tells us to not be anxious and it tells us to have patience, he's saying you need to learn how to wait. Because if you jump ahead of me, if you jump outside of my will, you can have something that actually was supposed to belong to you or actually does belong to you. But do you know how much grief it will bring you if you get it right now? Like some of you want a child so bad, but you don't even have the discipline with your finances, your house. You won't clean up your house. That poor little baby going to end up missing if that baby crawls on that floor. Some of you want a spouse, but you have no discipline. You still are deeply wounded. And you can't depend. You don't need to ever think that somebody else is going to enter the picture and heal your heart. Because people can't heal hearts. Only God can heal your heart. So sometimes we want things that we are not ready for. And God says, in this season that I'm allowing you or having you to wait, you need to let me work on you. And you need to trust me. You need to trust that I know that this is your husband. I know that this is your wife. I already have your children, the seed of your children right here in my hand. I know which job you'll end up on. I know which house is yours. I know your address. I know everything about you. And if you can just trust me to hold on to it until you get yourself together, when I bring you together, you won't squander it and it won't crush you. Have you ever tried to pick up something that you were not ready for? You know what? It's so funny. A few years back, I was going to go back into, because I was on active duty and then I was in reserves and then I got out. And I've probably been out about maybe 7 or 8 years. And you can go back in, within a certain age. And it's so funny because the physical and the prep for re-entry was totally different. So they had us do like these little weightlifting things. I didn't even know what that was about. But I guess they just kind of want to see our physical strength. Well, what was the coolest thing was, they start you off with a little, you pick it up, squat. Start you off with something else, you pick it up. So they just keep going and keep going. What they didn't know was the fact that I work out. So they had a champ on their hands. So the more I did, the more they added to it. But I prepared for it. I trained for it. Because you had other people who came in who could barely pick up anything because they had not trained for it. What sense would it make them for them to start us off on the same level, number one? But to put 100, 150 pounds on somebody who had not yet proven that he or she could lift 10. So regardless of what we think, we can't step outside of God's will. Trust me, I know I have done it before, because I know for a fact that I have grabbed something that was mine to have, and I grabbed it prematurely, and it burned my hands and broke my heart. Because God said, yes, I told you that that was your stuff, but I did not tell you that it was yours right now. And that's why sometimes we pray and ask God for signs. Lord, what do you think? Is this my job? Is this my husband? Is this my wife? Are you going to do this? That's why sometimes he won't tell us, because he know people like me. If he tells me too soon, I'm going to say, well, shoot, it's mine. Since it's mine, I'm going to grab it right now. And he says, no, it's yours, but it is not ready for you, and you are not ready for it. Because if you just trust God and you have the patience to allow him to work on you and to perfect that thing, when he bring you with that thing or with that promise, when he allows the patience to meet the promise, that's a real unity. That's a real covenant. That's a real relationship. So when you get it, you won't crush it, and it won't crush you. So going back to the prodigal son, we hear about the prodigal son. He was lost. I once was lost, but I'm now found. He went back to his father. His father brought him back in. But what we don't really always say is that the reason why he took his little tail out there was because he didn't want to wait. He didn't want to wait. And because he didn't want to wait, and his father did not want to deny him, his father gave him that thing that was always his, and he was not mature enough to handle it. Did y'all hear me? He was not mature enough to handle it. So to those of you who know God has promised you anything, sometimes, believe it or not, he is waiting on you. Everything that God touches is perfected already. Everything that he puts his hands on, if it was dirty, it is now clean. If it was incomplete, it is now whole. If it was broken, it is now mended. Everything that he touches is complete, is perfected, because that's who he is. So maybe, just maybe, we need to start allowing him to touch us, to get our minds ready for that thing that he promised us, to get our hearts ready for that thing that he promised us, to get our attitudes ready for that thing that he promised us, to put some discipline in our lives, some self-control in our lives. And I don't mean, this this mock self-control that we have sometimes, because sometimes we don't necessarily have self-control. We just wait a little longer before we flip. Sometimes we don't really have patience. We just wait a little longer before we flip. Sometimes it's not that he has adjusted our attitudes. We just wait a little longer before we flip. But God wants us to be ready from the inside out, because time and pressure will bring that thing that's in us out. It will absolutely bring that thing in us out. So you have to spend time with the Word of God. You have to spend time in prayer. You have to spend time acknowledging yourself and questioning your own motives and looking at your own behavior and paying attention to how you respond and how you react in certain situations, so that you can know you. So there is a season, there is a window of time where God will absolutely require us to wait on things and people who really do belong to us. But what he's saying is, if you work with me during this time, This downtime should be active downtime. It should be between you and him. You and him. Because we always want to say, God, give me my husband, give me my wife, give me my kids. I'm getting older. But God is looking at us like, you may be aging, but your wisdom isn't any wiser. Your smarts ain't no smarter. Your patience is impatient. You are aging, but are you growing with me? Are you maturing with me? When I give you like my absolute best for you, are you going to destroy it? And if there's anything in you that knows that, you know what, I got some stuff that I need to deal with, you need to allow God to get that out of you. That doesn't mean that you have to be 100% healed in your heart. Doesn't mean you have to be, attitude free, because we're going to go through life and we're going to have days that we're frustrated. We're going to have days that we're just completely upset. But we have to know who we are. At minimum, you should know who you are. At minimum, you should monitor your behavior. You should know, okay, well, if so-and-so does this, I'll probably react like that. So I know that's a part of me that I need to watch. If she says that, I know I'm probably going to say this. So I know I need to monitor myself in this area. It is about that. It is about you knowing who you are so that you can monitor those things that could come back and bite you, or could grab a hold of your promise and strangle it to death. So have patience. Don't be anxious, because when you have patience, you lack discipline, you lack wisdom, and you will absolutely go outside of God's will. And if you go outside of God's will with your little hands dirty, because I've gone outside of God's will and grabbed something that really did belong to me, and he snatched it back and said, now you gonna wait. Because now that you grabbed it and it bit you and you bit it, now you gotta wait. Not only are you going to wait, but you're going to have to recover from the fact that you grabbed it prematurely. So be patient. We can't be like the prodigal son and just keep wandering off. I'm going to wander off in search of my stuff. You have to stay at the feet of God to know who you are. If you stay there, he'll tell you where your stuff is. And he's so good at what he does, y'all, he'll bring it to you. You don't even have to wander off to find it. He's so good at what he does, he will bring it to you. So stand, be in prayer, trust that God knows what he's doing. Trust that he's not going to give your stuff away. He has assignments for all of his children. He has promises for all of his children. And some of these promises look the exact same, but they're different for you. He's not going to take Amy's stuff and give it to Sarah. He's not going to take Sarah's stuff and give it to Mary. He's not going to take Mary's stuff and give it to Rebecca. He's not going to take Rebecca's stuff and give it to Isaac. That's not how he does things. That's how we do things. But that's not how he does things. So if you can trust him with your stuff, you can wait on him. You can wait. And you won't be anxious in that waiting. Because a lot of us are waiting, but we're so miserable. We're uptight. We're frustrated. How are you waiting? Wait patiently on the Lord. And one more thing, and then I am done. How the same patience that God had for us, when we was out there doing whatever we wanted to do, we need to have that same patience for him. Think about that. But again, thank you all so much for watching. Have a blessed week, and I will see you all next video.